Hello all. Today we are talking about Chapter 15, Resistance Training Program Design. This is part 2. Here we go. When considering training load in terms of reps and resistance, it typically refers to the number of repetitions performed and the amount of resistance or weight used during an exercise. This combination plays a crucial role in determining the intensity and stimulus of a particular exercise or training session. The selection of appropriate reps and resistance depends on the specific training goals, individual fitness levels, and training experience. It's important to progress gradually and adapt the reps and resistance over time to continue challenging the muscles and promoting further adaptations. In determining your training loads, you must first determine the client's ability to perform properly in exercise. Loads can be assigned when client demonstrates proficiency, and a variety of methods can be used to determine the training load. Oftentimes it is about trial and error. You want to establish a goal repetition range and use knowledge and experience to determine initial training load. You always want to err on the side of caution. It's better to go light than it is to try to backtrack. Remember, determining the appropriate training load is not an exact science, and it may require some trial and error to find the right balance. Determining the appropriate training load for your workout involves considering several factors, including your client's training goals, current fitness level experience, and the specific exercise being performed. One repetition maximum, or 1RM, is one way to determine training loads by establishing your 1 repetition maximum for specific exercises. The 1RM represents the maximum amount of weight that your client can lift for a given exercise with proper form. Once you know their 1RM, you can use percentages of that weight to prescribe training loads for different rep ranges. For example, if their 1RM for the bench press is 100 kilograms, you might perform sets at 70% or 70 kilograms for 8 to 12 reps. Repetition maximum, or RM. If you don't know your 1RM or prefer not to test it, you can estimate your training loads based on your repetition maximum. For example, if you know your 10 RM, the maximum weight you can lift for 10 reps, you can use a percentage of that weight to determine your training load for a specific rep range. If your 10 RM for the squat is 80 kilograms, you might perform sets at 80% or 64 kilograms for 6 reps. Rating of perceived exertion, or RPE, is a subjective method of determining training loads based on how difficult an exercise feels during a set. The Borg rating of perceived exertion scale is commonly used, where a scale of 1 to 10 is used to rate the perceived effort. For example, an RPE of 8 to 9 indicates a high level of effort and suggests that you're close to muscular failure. Adjusting the weight based on your perceived exertion can help you guide your training loads. Training loads should be progressive, meaning they should gradually increase over time to continue challenging your body and promoting adaptations. Start with a weight that allows your client to perform the prescribed number of reps with proper form, and then progressively increase the weight as they become stronger and more comfortable with the exercise. Personalize the loads based on their individual abilities and limitations, considering factors such as their strength level, injury history, and recovery capacity. Repetition in reserve, or RIR, also known as reps in reserve or RPE based training, is a method used to gauge and manage training intensity during resistance training. It involves assessing how many repetitions your client has left in the tank before reaching failure or muscular fatigue. RIR provides a subjective measure of effort and allows for flexibility in adjusting training loads. So you want to assess repetition and reserves. After completing a set of an exercise, you have to assess how many repetitions your client could have performed before reaching failure. For example, if they stop a set with 2 repetitions still left, then you would consider that as having 2 reps in reserve, or 2 RIR. If they stop with 3 reps left, it would be 3 RIR, and so on. RIR allows you to adjust training intensity based on how close you are to failure. The lower the number of reps in reserve, the higher the intensity. For instance, training with 0 to 1 RIR means you're training very close to failure and at a high intensity, while training with 3 to 4 RIR indicates a lower intensity. RIR can guide you in adjusting training loads for subsequent sets or future workouts. If you aim to train with a specific RIR, you can adjust the weight accordingly. For example, if your goal is to train with 2 RIR, then you should choose a weight that allows you to stop the set with 2 reps still left. If your client consistently has more reps in reserve than desired, you can increase the weight. And if you consistently have fewer reps in reserve, you can decrease the weight. RIR is subjective and can vary from person to person based on factors like strength level, fatigue levels, and recovery capacity. It's important to listen to your client's body and adjust training loads based on their perceived exertion and RIR. As they progress and become more experienced, you can adjust the RIR targets or use other methods like percentage-based programming or periodization to further guide their training progression. RIR can be used in conjunction with other training methods and principles. For example, you can combine it with prescribed rep ranges, such as aiming for 2 to 3 RIR within a rep range of 8 to 12. This allows for flexibility while still providing structure to the training. Using RIR provides a subjective and adaptable approach to managing training intensity, allowing for auto-regulation based on how they're feeling on a given day. It can help prevent overreaching, adjust for fatigue or fluctuations in strength, and provide a more personalized training experience. Experimenting with RIR and finding the right balance for their goals and preferences can help optimize your training progress. When assigning loads for resistance training, the specific training goals play a crucial role in determining the appropriate intensity and volume. For strength development, you want to use a high repetition of 1 repetition max or work close to failure, such as 1 to 3 reps in reserve, to challenge the muscles and nervous system. You focus on compound exercises like squats, deadlifts, bench press that recruit multiple muscle groups. Aim for lower rep ranges and higher loads, 85 to 100% of your 1RM, to promote maximal strength gains. For muscle hypertrophy or muscle growth, you utilize a moderate percentage of 1RM and work with higher volumes. Aim for moderate rep ranges of 6 to 12 and loads that elicit muscle fatigue without sacrificing proper form of 65 to 85% of 1RM. You want to incorporate a variety of exercises targeting different muscle groups to stimulate overall muscle development. Muscular endurance. You're going to use lighter loads, less than 65% of 1RM, to allow for higher repetitions. Focus on higher rep ranges of 12 or more reps to improve muscular endurance. And perform exercises that target specific muscle groups or movement patterns, emphasizing controlled and continuous contractions. Power and explosiveness. You're going to incorporate explosive exercises such as Olympic lifts, plyometrics, and medicine ball throws. Use moderate to heavy loads that allow for explosive movements with proper technique, about 30 to 60% of 1RM for explosive exercises. Focus on speed and power output rather than fatigue, utilizing lower rep ranges of 1 to 5 and maximizing acceleration. Now, for general fitness and conditioning, you want to utilize a combination of exercises targeting different muscle groups and movement patterns. Vary the intensity and volume, incorporating both high and lower loads and rep ranges. Focus on the compound exercises, body weight exercises, and cardiovascular activities to improve overall fitness and endurance. Remember, those guidelines are general recommendations, and individual variations should be considered. Progression is a systematic fundamental principle in resistance training that involves systematically increasing the demands placed on the body over time to stimulate ongoing adaptations and improvements. It ensures that the body continues to be challenged and avoids plateaus in performance or fitness gains. As you become stronger and more proficient, gradually increasing the resistance or weight used in your exercises. This progressive overload stimulates muscle growth, strength gains, and improved performance. The rate of load increase would depend on your client's training status, their goals, and their individual capacity. The 2-for-2 rule: if the client can complete 2 or more repetitions in the repetition goal in the final set of an exercise for 2 consecutive training sessions, the load in all the sets for that exercise during subsequent training sessions can be increased. And this table shows the load increases based on training status, body area, and exercise type. So training status being novice, intermediate, or advanced, and then whether it's upper body or lower body. The type of exercise being core or assistance, and the absolute or the approximate load increase. You'll notice typically for upper body about 2.5 to 5 pounds. If you're working core, for assistance activities, it'd be like 1 1/4 to 2.5 pounds for a novice. Now for someone who's intermediate or advanced, you could possibly go up to 5 to 10 pounds for upper body core, and 5 to 10 pounds possibly for assistance as well. Notice for lower body, you'll go a little bit higher. And this is just a sample load increase using the 2-for-2 rule based upon a novice client whose repetition goal for the back squat is 10. And you can see they're exceeding the goal by 1 repetition in training session 1. In training session 2, they did not exceed the repetition goal. Training session 3, they did. And training session 4, they did as well. So you added 10 pounds to all 3 sets in the next training session. Training volume refers to the amount of work your client does during a workout, which includes the number of repetitions performed during an exercise. It is a measure of the total amount of activity or work that they perform. Training volume is best defined as the number of challenging sets they do per muscle per week. The ideal training volume for building muscle or hypertrophy is around 10 to 18 sets per muscle per week. When it comes to weight training, the term volume refers to the amount of work they've done, which includes the number of reps performed during an exercise. And it's also a measurement of the total amount of weight lifted, which can be calculated by multiplying the number of sets, reps, and weight lifted. It is important to note that the number of sets and reps that your client does is not the only factor that influences training volume. The weight lifted and the intensity of the exercise also plays a role. So again, training volume is equal to sets times reps times weight. Instead of considering the sets and rep ranges of a workout, you should really be focusing on daily training volume. It's also important to split their weekly training volume intelligently over multiple training sessions, with around 4 to 12 sets coming from each workout. The number of sets and reps required for resistance training is going to vary depending upon their goals and whether they are looking to emphasize strength, hypertrophy, or athletic performance. Assigning volume in a training program involves determining an appropriate number of sets and reps for each exercise, and adjusting the number of reps and sets, allowing them to manipulate training volume according to their specific goals. There is a dose-response relationship between set volume and muscle growth. Moderate to high volume resistance training programs are going to produce greater strength increases compared with lower volume programs. Rest intervals are an important variable that affects both acute responses and chronic adaptations to resistance exercise programs. The optimal rest interval between sets depends on the individual's goals, the muscle group being trained, and the intensity of the exercise. Muscular endurance and stabilization adaptations are best developed with relatively short rest periods, generally 0 to 90 seconds. Hypertrophy is best achieved with relatively short rest periods, often ranging from 0 to 60 seconds. However, the load volume and the current fitness level of the client may require longer rest periods. Maximal strength adaptations are best achieved with relatively long rest periods, generally 3 to 5 minutes, depending on the client's level of fitness and intensity of the exercises. Power adaptations also require relatively long rest periods of generally 3 to 5 minutes, depending on the client's level of fitness. Research has indicated that rest intervals between sets of 3 to 5 minutes may be safer and more reliable for strength training. However, short rest intervals of less than 60 seconds may have a negative impact on muscle performance in young and old adults. The NSCA recommends a 30-second rest interval between sets to improve muscular endurance. The rest interval duration can also be influenced by individual factors, including their fitness level, training, experience, and personal preferences. Some individuals may require longer rest intervals to recover adequately between sets, while others may thrive with shorter intervals. It is essential to allow them to listen to their body and adjust rest intervals as needed. Overall, the optimal rest interval between sets depends on the individual's goals, the muscle group being trained, and the intensity of the exercise. Shorter rest periods are generally better for muscular endurance and hypertrophy, while longer rest periods are better for maximal strength and power adaptation. Training variation is an important aspect of resistance training that can help maximize muscle growth and prevent plateaus. The appropriate alteration of training variables to produce adaptations over the long term. To maximize muscle growth, you should challenge muscles in their fully lengthened and shortened and mid ranges by rotating exercises. Exercise variation has been promoted as a potential strategy to support complete muscular development. Use 3 to 4 exercises per muscle group within a block to ensure uniform muscle growth across the entirety of that muscle group. There are many different weight training sets that can change up the routine, build muscle, and help your client reach their goals. Moderate to high weekly training volumes defined as set volume are more effective for strength gains as compared with lower training volumes. So overall, incorporating training variation into their resistance training program can help prevent plateaus and maximize muscle growth. This can be achieved by rotating exercises, using different sets and rep schemes, and varying the intensity and volume of their workout. It's important to find the right balance between variation and consistency to ensure that they're making progress towards their goals. Training variation, also known as exercise variation or program variation, refers to the intentional, systematic inclusion of different exercises, training methods, or variables within a workout or training program. By regularly and changing exercises, training methods, or variables, it challenges your body in new ways. This promotes continuous adaptation and prevents plateaus by targeting different muscle groups, movement patterns, and energy systems. It can help you break through performance and strength plateaus and continue making progress toward your client's goals. By incorporating a variety of exercises that target the same muscle groups from different angles or with different movement patterns, they can stimulate muscle growth and develop more comprehensively. Different exercises place varying demands on muscles, promoting balanced muscular development and reducing the risk of overuse injury. Repeating the same exercises or movement patterns excessively can increase the risk of overuse injuries. Introducing variations helps alleviate this risk by reducing repetitive stress on specific muscles, tendons, and joints. It allows your client to distribute the workload more evenly across the body, promoting overall structural balance and minimizing the risk of overuse-related imbalances. Incorporating variation into their training routine can keep workouts fresh and exciting. Trying new exercises or training methods can help combat boredom and maintain motivation and prevent mental burnout. Varying exercises and training methods can also provide opportunities to learn new movements and develop new skills and improve overall physical capabilities. By challenging themselves with different exercises and training modalities, they can expand their movement repertoire and enhance their physical abilities. Training variation can help to reduce the risk of overtraining and improve long-term training sustainability by avoiding excessive repetitive stress on specific muscles or joints. They can maintain a healthy balance between training stimulus and recovery, reducing the likelihood of overuse injuries and burnout. Rest intervals can be manipulated within a periodized training program, and different phases or cycles may involve varying rest intervals to target different training goals such as strength, power, or hypertrophy. It is important to note that while training variation can be beneficial, it should be implemented strategically and within the context of goals and training program. Variation should not be so frequent or random that it hampers progress or prevents consistency. A well-designed training program will incorporate appropriate periods of variation and consistency to optimize adaptation and results. Within session variation and resistance can be achieved by manipulating variables such as sets, reps, exercises, and rest intervals within a single training session. Varying your workouts can help your client push past a plateau and coax growth and strength from your muscles by surprising them. The optimal rest interval between sets depends on the individual's goals, the muscle group being trained, and the intensity of the exercise. The longer the rest interval, 2 to 3 minutes, typically leads to more size and strength gains when training with low or moderate loads, while shorter rest intervals of less than 60 seconds might have a negative impact on muscle performance in young and old adults. You really want to, within week variation, vary the intensity of exercises selected across the week, again, to keep people from getting bored and to change up the stimulus. You can have light and heavy days. Vary the repetition range during sessions. So have a daily undulating periodization. Have a heavy day, a moderate, and then a light day to help recover. Between week variation really varies between the weeks, as it states. And so alterations in volume, intensity, frequency, exercise selection, and training focus is going to vary. You can alter the training density. So you'll alter the number of days per training mode within a week and target specific outcomes and that really helps to manage fatigue more efficiently. Sequencing the training plan is an important aspect of resistance training that can help maximize performance and prevent injury. Here's some principles and tips for sequencing a training session. Your exercise sequencing should be individualized on an athlete by athlete basis using the principles of fatigability and priority while taking into account special circumstances like performing advanced training protocols or managing injured athletes. The main goal of exercise sequencing when training athletic qualities concurrently, your plyometric ability, rate of force development, maximum force output, muscular endurance, etc. It's to optimize the training adaptations for each single modality and reduce the detrimental effects of neuromuscular fatigue. Optimizing exercise orders driven by two interrelated principles, fatigability and priority. Fatigability refers to the degree to which an exercise or modality induces fatigue, while priority refers to the importance of a given exercise or modality for achieving the desired training outcome. The principle of specificity states that exercise should be sequenced in a way that prioritizes the most specific exercises for the desired outcome, while the principle of fatigue management states that exercises that induce the most fatigue should be sequenced later in the workout, while exercises that induce less fatigue should be sequenced earlier in the workout. The principle of exercise order states that exercise should be sequenced in a way that allows for optimal performance and safety. Common sense exercise sequencing principle is to prioritize your weaknesses by training them first. Sometimes called the periodization of training, sequencing refers to the coordination and ordering of various modes of training over time. Overall, sequencing the training plan involves individualizing exercise sequencing based on the principles of fatigability and priority, prioritizing the most specific exercise for the desired outcome, and sequencing exercises in a way that allows for optimal performance and safety, and coordinating and ordering various modes of training over time. And that is all that I have today. I look forward to talking with you again. Have a great day.